Great. That voice is always jarring. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. 3 p.m. on a Thursday. The weekend is in sight. This workshop is unique, similar to our last workshop where we're focusing on specific elements of the application process. A couple of weeks ago, Lois gave us a great presentation on budget and work plans. Lois is our consultant from the organization Civics. They went over the budget and work plan, and today we're going to go over some methods, data tools, and analysis options, or just a few examples that might help you develop your application. So it's not going to be necessarily hands-on, but we're going to be diving in a bit deeper. Then we're going to have a Q&A for folks who might have specific data questions at the end. So definitely write down questions as they arise for you, and then hopefully we can get to it at the end of the presentation. I will do a quick intro for our team, and then we'll get into the presentation. So good afternoon again. My name is Brandon. Use he, him pronouns. I'm a senior planner on OPR's Integrated Climate Adaptation and Resilience Program team, working specifically on the Adaptation Planning Grant Program. I'm joined by Sarah Samden here and our technical assistance provider, Civics, whose representative is Lois today. And you'll be hearing a presentation from her later on in this session. I want to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the state of California exists on the occupied territory of over 110 federally recognized tribes and over 70 non-federally recognized tribes, and this land has been stewarded by Indigenous people since time immemorial. We acknowledge the critical importance of these lands and the waters to our Indigenous peoples of California today, and we at the Office of Planning and Research join you all from Sacramento, California, which is the ancestral territory of the Southern Maidu, the Valley Miwok, Patwin, and Misanan peoples. We're a community that includes people with a wide range of access needs. Some of us get our access needs met day to day by dominant culture, and others do not. We'd like to cultivate a space here that works together as a community to listen to access needs and work towards meeting them. With this in mind, we have a couple of requests and reminders for everyone. Please say your name before you speak. It's okay to turn off your video and still be present. It's okay to be here and not feeling 100%. Help people on the phone or with visual impairments to see what's happening on video or chat by saying it out loud. It's okay to moderate how much you want to interact. And if you need to take a break, that's totally fine and encouraged. If anyone has any access requests that would support your participation in this call or with us more generally, we invite you to share that via chat or privately message either myself or one of the co-hosts, Sarah or Lois, or to the group that is most appropriate. And if you're up for it, if you could now share your name, your organization, and your current location in the chat while we get going. We'll double check the chat here. Great. So let's get into it. So this is our agenda. We have the quick welcome, which I just did. We're going to give a quick update on the Adaptation Planning Grant timeline, a quick overview of the Adaptation Planning Grant Program, and then we're going to have a presentation from our technical assistance provider, Civics, on data tools and analysis. And we'll save the end of today's session for Q&A. For the Q&A section, if you have technical questions specific to your project, please follow up with us via email or attend office hours. We're really hoping that the Q&A today can remain broadly applicable to the most attendees. So if possible, just save the specific questions for your project for a more one-on-one context. And again, we're recording this session, so it will be available on our website upon request and publicly available on our homepage of the Adaptation Planning Grant Program. So the Adaptation Planning Grant Program interest form is now due at 11:59 p.m. on May 20th. The pre-application form is not scored, but it is a prerequisite to accessing the main application. The round 2 main application window has also been extended to 11:59 p.m. on June 3rd, 2024. So approximately 1 month from today. All interested applicants are encouraged to take advantage of this extended application window to thoroughly review the application guidelines and the application requirements. This is a quick diagram of that extended timeline. So you'll see here we have our application window opened on February 16th. Then we had the priority deadline for technical assistance was March 18th. Pre-application interest forms are due May 20th, and then the main application form is due June 3rd. Through May 30th, we will continue to host virtual office hour sessions weekly on Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. to answer applicant questions. There are only 4 left after today. So we really encourage folks to try and make those office hours. They can be incredibly helpful. We will add a link to the registration form, the Zoom registration in the chat. And if you can't make a Thursday at 1 p.m., just reach out to us and we can set up a one-on-one time to chat. Thanks, Sarah, for adding those links. So let's get into a quick program overview of APGP. For those who are already familiar, this will be brief. For those who are new and have questions that I may not cover in this overview, please add them to the chat. Today we're focused on the Adaptation Planning Grant Program, but I want to share briefly an overview of the 3 other grant programs, the 2 other grant programs under ICARP portfolio, especially since the HEAT program round 1 and Adaptation Planning Grant Program round 2 will overlap. The Regional Resilience Grant Program aims to support local, regional, and tribal entities at a regional scale develop climate resilience solutions. They just awarded $21 million to 16 projects starting this year. The Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program will fund planning and implementation projects to reduce the impacts of extreme heat and build community resilience. That program will build frameworks for change and invest in local and regional and tribal projects that strengthen communities that are vulnerable to heat. And then finally, our program, the Adaptation Planning Grant Program, supports local, regional, and tribal communities engaging in integrated climate adaptation planning activities. The Adaptation Planning Grant Program is an initiative with multiple rounds of funding. So we had round 1, now we're on round 2. And round 1 was able to successfully award approximately $8 million to 14 incredible projects. Those projects ranged from $150,000 to $650,000 each, which really reflects the diversity and scale of those initiatives. More information can be found on our webpage. If you just go down to the bottom of the webpage, click on round 1 resources, and then you'll see a full report on those round 1 grantees. Looking ahead, though, for round 2, we're excited to announce $9.5 million is available in funding this year. And one of the great advantages of our program is that no match funding is required. A lot of folks ask about that. And it is true, there's no match funding required. We understand that the challenges our communities face are, not always addressed when there's sort of that match funding requirement that prevents them from being able to to successfully apply for our grant programs. And so we just want to make that process as accessible as possible. And then secondly, what's new for this round of funding compared to our first round is that this year we have technical assistance for the application development process being led by Civics. And we also have advanced payment available for qualifying entities. And more information can be found in our guidelines on how to qualify for advanced pay. So some examples of eligible entities are local public entities, California Native American tribes, community-based organizations or CBOs. That includes, but is not limited to 501c3 nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, philanthropic organizations, foundations, and other organizations with a history of representing vulnerable communities. Examples of ineligible applicants include for-profit entities, other state agencies, and then what we're looking for this year as far as partnership is for lead applicants to have a minimum of one co-applicant, and for more than one co-applicant, in instances where there's more than one applicant, we are totally flexible and encourage folks who might have larger partnerships. And we have more information on that in our guidelines as well. Eligible activities, our program focuses specifically on planning activities, and more information can be found in California's Adaptation Planning Guide. We'll add a link in the chat as well. There's a lot of examples. Our program is very flexible in the types of planning projects we can fund. The projects we can't fund are very short. This is a short list, but a lot of folks will be hopefully pleased to see that our other grant programs can fund some of these activities. So, for example, construction projects or other types of implementation projects, pre-development types of projects, engineering design projects, things like that. We cannot fund, but our other programs can. And then we can't fund CEQA or NEPA activities, unfortunately. This is due to the fact that OPR manages the CEQA guidelines, and so we have to be impartial in all cases related to CEQA. And then here are the APGP key program priorities. So APGP really aims to foster inclusivity and flexibility in the climate adaptation planning process. So we do that in many different ways, including the very flexible list of eligible planning activities. But more specifically, our goals for our scoring criteria and just the way that we've set up the whole program are really to enhance accessibility and diversity, to minimize barriers for diverse applicants, to prioritize vulnerable communities through adopting an all-risk approach to various climate impacts and encouraging community preparedness and participation in projects, emphasizing integrated infrastructure planning through focusing on social and physical infrastructure integration, as well as addressing cross-sector issues related to climate risk, building community resilience through not only enhancing statewide capacity through technical support and peer learning, but also through empowering communities for effective climate adaptation. And then finally, elevating equity in the planning process. This can look like prioritizing fair access. It can look like directing funding specifically to disadvantaged communities. And really, we just are hoping to support projects that address historical disparities, with the ultimate goal being to create an equitable and resilient future for all Californians. So here's the quick timeline of where our program has been and sort of where we're going. In summer of 2023, we developed round 2. We had a public comment period this past winter, and we are currently in that green zone, winter, spring 2024, with the application window closing in the beginning of June. And then we're hoping to announce awards here at the end of the summer 2024. So with that, I will hand it over to Lois from Civics for the next part of our presentation, which is the Data Tools and Analysis workshop.
Unmute myself would be a good call.
Perfect. I will mute myself. Also that'll be a good call.
All right. So everybody, if you don't see my screen, I guess send a note in the chat, but it should be up there. As Brandon said, I'm Lois Coulson with Civics, providing TA to APGP, and I have a team behind me that's also helping out and providing technical assistance, probably to some of you on the line. So thank you for making
slides yet.
Oh, you can't. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go back here. That's because in Zoom, I always forget to hit that second share link. Can
Oh,
you
yep.
see it?
There it is. Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Looks like you're also seeing my Zoom bar, huh?
I can't see the Zoom bar.
Okay,
we
good.
see the agenda, and then I can see your cursor moving around.
Okay. Well, then I'll just leave the Zoom bar where it's at because I don't want to mess anything up by doing it. All right. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us today. As Brandon said, this will be recorded, so it'll go up online as well. If you have to leave early or miss something, you can come back to it. It's not a very long workshop, and it's not going super deep, like Brandon said. I've talked to many folks that are applying, and so have my colleagues. And sort of one of the things that we kind of want to uncloud with this workshop is just what kind of data you can use. It's not as necessarily intimidating or a certain type of data that OPR is looking for. So hopefully, if nothing else, you walk away feeling validated about the kind of data that you have and can figure out a way to incorporate it into your narrative responses for your application. So the agenda, we're just going to talk about where in the application it lends itself to using data the best. We're going to talk about the tools mainly that OPR has provided and where those are at and how you can access them. And then I'm going to walk through just two tool demonstrations, the CalAdapt, and I'm going to go through a pivot table creation. For those of you that have used them, that might be a little boring, but for those of you that haven't used them very much, maybe it'll open your world to a whole new way to crunch some data very quickly. I recently became a pivot table convert, so I'm excited to talk about that. So in the application, you probably have seen some places where data is mentioned, like optional to upload. These are going to be the places that you want to really look to see what data you have already available or look to the tools that OPR has provided. But first, before we jump into that, I did want to post this because I thought it was a really good comment on sort of the plethora of data that you can use. So in round one, folks that were successful in round one and our grantees now, they did a really good job of using data, but they didn't all use it the same way. They didn't use data, all the same data source. It came in photos, maps, charts, even in-text references and quotes. So I just, like I said before, if you walk away with nothing else, walk away with a bigger open mind about what you can include as data to support your narrative. The first place in the application is it's not the first, not the first section, I think it's the second section, but the first place that I think data really lends itself to helping your narrative and helping OPR as the reviewer read through your project vision and description. So in this section, there's two distinct questions about providing a clear description and then also how your project is aligning with other climate adaptation goals and identifying the gaps that your project might be filling. So there's different ways you can use data here. And like that last slide was describing, I mean, photos might be just what you need to describe to the reviewers what your community looks like, what what are the issues that you're facing? Simple maps, simple outlines or site maps or project description, visuals can be helpful. If you have GIS data, that can be helpful. But this is where you're going to pull from your personal sources mostly. This is where data that you have on hand or that is easily accessible could be helpful, like quotes, maybe reports that you already have from other departments. The other section, and there's just two sections that I'm going to go over, but the other section is the community need and adaptive capacity narrative section. And there's a few questions in here. I've only showing two of the questions right now. This is also the same section that you're going to be talking about if you have, if you're in a disadvantaged community or a small rural community. This is also where you're uploading that evidence. But then the following questions are really asking you to pull out and give a detailed account of your existing population, especially the vulnerable communities that are in your project area. And then also in the other question, describing the anticipated climate change impacts. So one of the tools we're going to look at is the Cal Adapt, like I said, and we'll walk through a demonstration of that. But that might be a tool that you could use here to describe the vulnerabilities that are forthcoming that you're predicting. And then we'll look at on the next slide here. OPR has specifically in the guidelines in section 2.5. It's page 19. If you have if it's difficult to find, I'd like to give as many ways as possible to try to find where we're looking. But there's a bolded section here about prioritization of vulnerable communities. And this is the first place that OPR provides a great list, a substantive list of sources that you can go to, and they're user-friendly, and you can create and pull data from them for your particular location. And these are particular to vulnerable communities in your area. So my, I guess my personal advice, if you have the opportunity, if you have someone with bandwidth in your office or your partner maybe has someone, is that someone who's familiar with your project could start culling through these links and finding which one would be the most helpful to your project and supporting your narrative. Because again, without using all, your whole narrative response with just words and nothing else, it's really helpful for the reviewers to see like visuals and graphics or photos, things to pull out and really tell the story and support what you're trying to explain to the reviewers. But if you have someone that has a little bit more bandwidth to just tee up that information and say, hey, this is a great source to explain XYZ of your project, you should take a look at it. That might help some of you out if you have that option. I know that's not necessarily available to everyone. This was the other source of links that I mentioned in the hint on the previous couple slides ago. This is in Appendix D on page 40 of the Round 2 guidelines again. That appendix has about 3 sections in it, and this is the middle section, and it is bolded. This is a screenshot, so it looks just like this, but there's a ton of links in here, and these links are really good for that question in your community need section of the narrative, talking about impact of climate risks, but especially to your vulnerable populations. So again, it looks like a lot. It is a lot of information, which is really helpful, but if you have someone, or if you can just set aside a little bit of time and just go through them without any major intention and just see what you come out with. And it might have a light bulb go off and be like, wow, this is great. And I can put this into this section of my narrative, and it'll really help explain what I'm trying to tell them. That's kind of the way I want you to think about the data, so that you're not overwhelmed and you can hopefully just highlight the ones that are really essential to your story. So some other examples of data sources that are not in the guidelines, US Census data. Most of you have probably used that. That is perfectly good to use to explain possibly in the project description your community, the demographics, median household income, internet connectivity. All of these things speak to vulnerabilities and community resilience if your project has anything to do with those. Which they all will. Excuse me, I'm having a cough, and when I talk, it gets worse. The other source of data that I already mentioned, but I want to emphasize it again, is just you all probably have more data at your fingertips than you even realize. So just don't forget about that. Other departments or nonprofits or your partners, just thought partner with someone or brainstorm with someone about what's out there already. What have you seen? What, did some report come out of the University of California, Berkeley last year that you think is really relevant and could help support your narrative response? So keep an open mind. I already mentioned these, but these want to emphasize again, the data tools, they're all listed in the guidelines. I don't think these links will work when this gets posted, but these are the section 2.5 and appendix D in the round 2 guidelines. There's over 30 links just between these two parts. So there's really no reason you won't be able to find something that helps explain and tell your story. Okay, we're going to walk through a couple demonstrations. I've got a couple screenshots, but I am going to switch my screen and go over to CalAdapt. See here. So you see CalAdapt is now should be showing on the presentation. This is the main page of CalAdapt. You scroll down, CalAdapt has a ton of different climate tools that you could explore and use. We're going to just walk through the most basic one, the local climate change snapshot tool. It's very user-friendly. So what I did there is I just clicked on that green box for the snapshot. And then you come to this page and it's not highlighting anything because I haven't entered anything in yet. You can search by address, county, city, census tract, choose any of these. What I did for preparing for the workshop is I chose Victorville just because I'm not working with anybody in Victorville and I didn't see anyone else on the team. So I just thought it'd be better to do one that maybe nobody is focusing on right now. So it defaults to Sacramento when you click on city. Just going to delete that. And usually it'll pop up a little drop down. Yep. I hit enter and then the drop down came up. Click on that. It worked when that map zooms out and goes to Victorville. And then I'm just going to hit generate snapshot. And it's very quick. Look, I know I'm on Victorville because it tells me right here. It lays out 3 different climate issues. What do you want to call these? Climate change predictors, temperature, precipitation, and wildfire. It's on temperature right now. So I'm going to scroll down and just show you. It already computes this handy graph. And it's showing you high emission scenario and a medium emission scenario. If you want to see more about what that actually means, you can go over here to the about data. And this would help you explain if you're using this data in your narrative, saying like, in a high emission scenario in the future in 2060, the temperature is expected to rise by X, right? So it might be helpful to know exactly what high emission scenario is. And that's all about CO2 emissions continue to rise throughout the 21st century. Medium emissions is if they peak at 2040. You can go back. Oh, and you can also, each of these different indicators have, or different these climate events have different ways you can parse out the information. So extreme heat days, average temperature, warm nights. So you can do any of those. You can go to precipitation now, and it automatically changes everything. This doesn't look that interesting. I was looking at it earlier, but if you come up here, some of y'all might be interested in maximum length of dry spell. And there you get a different outcome with high emissions and medium emissions again, which doesn't make much difference if the high or medium scenario is used, but certainly there are longer days as we go into the future, longer time with dry spell. And I'll just point out quick that wildfire, they're very transparent about this being really difficult to project exactly. And they're just pretty straightforward about that and talking about how the Sierra Nevada area is the best for the model inputs, but it's still, if it's something of interest, something you might want to look at. And then I have not looked into what this actually means, KBDI, excuse me. But you can just play around. You can see what works for you. I will say that when you're back, if you go back to select new location, don't give up if it doesn't work under city. You can come back to it. Victorville one time gave me a little bit of a hard time. I had to come back later in the afternoon and then it worked again. One time I went into Victorville, I got in okay, but wildfire prediction wasn't showing up. But then it came back. So you can refresh, go back out, maybe go back in and see if it works. And watershed I did not try, but these other ones I did, and they should come up. So that is the local climate change snapshot from CalAdapt. And we'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end if we can go over that again. Hop back over to these are just screenshots that are going to be in the slide deck so that when it's posted, if folks just look at the slide deck. Next, I want to talk about the pivot table that I promised. So anyone that has not used a pivot table, this is available in Microsoft Excel. And it's really just a way, if any of you have a spreadsheet, perhaps like this one, this is a demo spreadsheet completely made up, not based on any location. But if anyone has a bunch of information in their files, which I've heard some of you do, and I used to have in my files when I worked for a local government. And what do you do with all this information? How do you condense it and analyze it and evaluate it really, really easily? And just basic, right? We're not doing anything magic with this. I'm going to walk through how to create a pivot table. I also included a link. It's a YouTube link. You all can look this up on YouTube too, just tutorials, beginners on how to create a pivot table. But let's go to that spreadsheet. So this is the real spreadsheet in Excel. It's got 119 entries, I believe. Yeah, 119 distinct, unique entries. And basically what this is as though someone went out and did a survey, let's say a nonprofit went out and did a survey and asked their community, you know, what's your number one concern about climate change? And they have a drop-down list of options, and these are the responses in column E. What's your level of awareness about this concern? And another question is, you know, what's your willingness to act? And then adaptive measures in this scenario could be filled out by staff or maybe by the survey respondent. It doesn't much matter. This is just an example to show like the kind of data that you might have someplace and you don't know how to crunch it. Now I do need to move this bar because it's in the way. Okay, good. All right, so if you have a spreadsheet like this, or if you don't and you can put all the data into a spreadsheet like this, and once you get it there, you would go up to the top of Excel to insert, and here's your pivot table option. Because my cursor is inside this table, I'm going to click pivot table, and it's automatically going to pop up with the whole table included. If my cursor had been outside, then it wouldn't know, and I would have to manually select it. This just makes it a little bit easier. And then it's asking me, okay, where do you want to put your pivot table, in this worksheet or in a new one? And you can see at the bottom, I have 4 worksheets here that I was working with before the workshop, just to run through it, make sure it all worked. I'm going to do another new worksheet because it would be too messy for my use if I put it in the same one. So hit OK. Okay, down here, it opened up a new tab, sheet 7, but we don't have anything yet. We've got all of those columns that you saw, headings, they're over here on the right, and we've got an empty table over here. You could play with all of this just for time. I'm going to just kind of do what I showed in the screenshot. What I want to see is what concerns did folks pick? What climate concerns did they pick? And what's their willingness to act? Because that might be kind of interesting if you were submitting, you know, just make believe here again, this is fake. If you were submitting a project and you wanted to show OPR some data like, hey, yeah, our community is really concerned about air quality and they are really willing to make changes or to do something about it. That might be interesting to know or to tell OPR. So go over here. These are the headings, like I said, from the column. And I already know because I messed around with it that I want this in the rows. I could put it in columns, but look how long this is. Can't read it. So put it in rows. I already know that I want to look at willingness to act, and that's going to go in my columns. And now it's nice and clean and it's small and it's readable. Well, I still need to total something up. I can put concerns or willingness to act in the values. It doesn't really matter. It's going to come up with the same numbers. So look what that did. It computed all of this data from our spreadsheet and just totaled it up. Just summed each of those responses up, and then it broke them down by the willingness to act. So air pollution is the #1 response for a concern, because there's 33 total, but broken down, 23 of those folks are very willing to act about it, and 10 are somewhat willing to act about it. So again, it's just an example, a demonstration of how you could crunch that. There's lots you can do with the pivot table that I, frankly, I'm almost at my limit of what I do with pivot tables, but you can sort this like you would any other Excel data. You can change the calculation that you do here. You can turn it into ratios, all different sorts of things. Again, you can look up tutorials online that are super helpful, and you can find some short ones too. Last thing I'll show you real quick, if you go back up to insert, you go over here, there's a little option to do a pivot chart. We're just going to click it. It pops up this window. I had played around with a few. The one that I liked the best was the bar, but you could look at any of them depending on what your data is. And I just hit OK. And again, it just spits out this beautiful, clean little chart. The concerns are on the left, and then the willingness to act is broken out. And you can copy paste this into another document, something that you might want to upload, or you can just use the data in your inline text, right? So I know I'm not blowing any minds here, but I thought it was worth sharing like some options for what you could do with data that might be in your hands, because I do know I've talked to a couple folks that are in that situation. And I'm ending on the same comment that I started with, just because I think it's really important, again, to walk away. Just don't get stuck in feeling like you can only have like super academic data. Like anything that you have that helps tell your story is what I understand OPR wants to see, and it's much easier to review and understand what you're trying to tell them about your project. And that concludes just the data discussion, but happy to answer some questions.
Great, thanks, Lois. We have a few questions. One from Deborah Early. How would you recommend to use CalAdapt for an unincorporated area within a county? Is it possible to include multiple census blocks? That's a great question. Would you mind sharing your screen? I believe there's a census track option on CalAdapt we can go through real quick. And then while you queue that up, I can answer Sam. Where might we be able to access this recording afterwards? We will be posting this recording on our website, Sam, and it'll also be on our YouTube, on OPR's YouTube channel. Where else will it be? It'll be sent out in a newsletter, but mainly our website. That's a good question. Great, yeah, and then Deborah, if you're able to see the screen. So if you click census track, yep, there we go. Maybe we could use your example, Deborah. Did it automatically populate that census track, or did you just click it in the map?
Well, yeah, I looked at the county first. So it's San Luis Obispo County, and I didn't actually have the census number, so it was more just a question I saw the census track, but didn't know if there's a way to do multiple blocks of census to get a whole unincorporated area, or the best way to do that.
Yeah, sometimes cities register as unincorporated areas. So, Lois, could you type in San Leandro for me real quick?
Is that Lean?
DRO. Yep.
Is it a county?
No, it's an unincorporated place. It's not showing up.
No, let's see.
No. Yeah, it may not have census designated places. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's it. So it looks like the city option is pulling census designated places as well, which are unincorporated areas. So it might work for you, Deborah. I would just try it out. And then if that doesn't work, then yeah, you would have to sort of, get a list of the census tracts that make up your area and look them up on an individual basis. I haven't experimented with watershed, but that might also be something that works for you. Or maybe a specific address.
Yeah, thank you. Like a zip code?
I don't think it'll just take a zip code.
Zip code, okay.
I don't think.
Yeah. Maybe type in a specific address when you get to it and see what it gives you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a zip code for San Leandro, Brandon? Just see if it works.
I do not.
Okay.
I just know that.
Deborah, do you want to, what's a zip code that you're?
Yeah, 93445.
Just see what happens. No. Oh, that's funny. Is that?
No.
I don't know why that came out.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe in the address you can use zip code to get you.
Yeah, that looks good. I don't know that we're trying to zero in there on Oceano is what I was thinking, which is a unincorporated area of San Luis Obispo.
And
Well,
then yeah,
that's
maybe when you click generate snapshot, I wonder what it gives you for that address.
That looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, that looks good because it says snapshot for Oceano.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Welcome. We have another question. As questions come in, yeah, feel free to put them in the chat as some folks have already demonstrated, or use the raise hand feature on the bottom if you'd like to verbally express your question, and we can call on you in the order that your hand's raised. So we have another question from Helen. Walter, one of the last round grantees is the county that we are in, but we would like to apply for another project that is in our city. How would that impact our application? Are there a certain amount of projects awarded in certain regions? No, how to impact your project? It would not have any bearing on your project score. Impact your application. There's a certain amount of projects awarded in certain regions. I think our the Office of Planning and Region, so the governor's office is where our program is, and the governor would like to see regional diversity in our projects, but we do not use regional diversity as like a scoring criteria. So your project would essentially not be changed at all. We have some round one applicants who are also interested in applying for round two, and we have some applicants who applied last year and were unawarded who are going to apply again. We're encouraging folks from other grant programs to apply, so none of that would have any bearing on your, the ultimate determination of whether your project gets awarded or not. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then the next question is from Raymond J. Can you describe partnership agreement requirements? When are they due with the application? The final award is a template available. Partnership agreement. So after projects are selected to be awarded, they commence a contract period where we share with them a grant agreement and a partnership agreement. The grant agreement is between the state and the awardee, the lead applicant, sorry, and that's contractually binding. It includes a lot of the financial aspects of it, requires a wet signature, and really just keeps, make sure that the lead applicant is sort of responsible for completing the work as outlined in the work plan. The partnership agreement is a loose template that the state does not, we don't sign it, and it's not a contractual obligation. It's really just an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the lead applicant and the co-applicant that can be altered and adjusted to fit the needs of your specific project. It can, I think we have a template that has it's a handful of pages, but you can shrink it down to 2 pages. You can elongate it to 40, just, to fit the partnership. And in some cases, there may not be a partnership, right? We have the justification section in the community partnership subsection of the narrative questions doc, where that's the main application, sorry. And folks will be able to sort of justify why a partnership was not available. And in those cases, if someone's awarded, they will not need to complete a partnership agreement. How do I get a copy of the partnership template? There currently isn't a partnership template. You can look up our round 1 grantee, the CCAG, the county. Let me see. They published theirs publicly. I can share, if you wanted to email, I can share you the template, but it's not legally binding, so it's not really that big of a deal. I think a lot of folks think that the partnership agreement is a big deal to be worried about while they're applying, and it's not. It can change, and you can totally edit it to fit your project. Maybe Raymond, we could follow up and see what the concern is, but I will try and let me find the round 1 example to share with you. I think folks are used to partnership agreements being required parts of contracts, and so there's like a little bit of folks get worried about it. But it's pretty informal from our perspective. I just put in the chat a template of a partnership agreement from that was made public. It's still in draft form, but you can see what an example of one would look like. Again, it's not legally binding. I wouldn't take any of it too seriously or to mean much. It doesn't have any impact on the application process, so I don't think folks should be too worried about it, but a little bit more information can't hurt. Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. All right, do we have any more questions? We can also, if you have general questions about the program, we're all ears, or more specific data questions you might have. Any feedback for us on either the workshop or the application process, the program itself? We don't want to end the workshop early, but we can. And folks are always here. I'm gonna go ahead and put my email address in the chat. If folks have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. Yeah, our pleasure. Again, we'll be publishing the recording on our webpage. It's going to be a YouTube link, and so it'll also be on YouTube. We'll be able to share that out. And really appreciate everyone being here. This has been great. Again, this is our last workshop. Please do try and catch one of our final office hours that are going to be happening over the next few weeks, every Thursday at 1 o'clock. Great. Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Danica.